Hey everyone, welcome back to our series, The Story of Christmas from the People Who Were Actually There. Now, Christmas is always a busy time of the year. I mean, think about everything you've got going on at work. You've got deadlines that you have to make. You probably have some projects that you have to get done before the end of the year. Maybe you have to work on next year's budget. Or even in our personal lives, there's so much to do. There's Christmas shopping, there's Christmas parties, there's shuttling around your kids from all the things that they have to do. So we're all really busy people at Christmas time. But it's actually always been this way. The first Christmas was a really busy Christmas. You might remember from Luke chapter 2, the Christmas story, that Jesus is born in Bethlehem during a Roman census. That's why Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem. They had to go there because that was Joseph's ancestral home, and they had to go there for the census. And so the town of Bethlehem would have been filled with people, and that's why, as Mary and Joseph are looking for a place to stay, what do they find? They find that there's no room for them, as it's famously said in Luke chapter 2, verse 7. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling cloths and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. Now, the typical way we understand the Christmas story is that Joseph and Mary go to some inn, they go to like a motel, and the innkeeper says, "There's no place for you. You can't stay here. We don't have any rooms, no vacancy." And so they have to go and find a barn or a cave, and that's where Jesus is born, and he's placed in a manger. Now, that might have been what happened, but it's a little trickier to understand than that because the word inn is a word that's not really used too much in the New Testament. In fact, it's a word that can also refer to a furnished upper room. And so when Jesus is having his Last Supper with his disciples, Luke says that it's in a room like that. It uses the same word that we find here for the word inn. And so what could be happening in the Christmas story is that Mary and Joseph, they go to one of Joseph's relatives, and Joseph's relative, who we normally understand as the innkeeper, says, "There's no room for you guys upstairs. There's no room for you up here in this nice furnished open room. You're going to have to go downstairs to the bottom, to like the basement dwelling where we keep the animals, and that's where there's a manger, and that's why Jesus is placed in there." So either way, the story might have happened either way. We really don't know. But the principle is the same. There was no room for Jesus the first Christmas. And I think the reality is, with everything we have going on in our lives, at work, in our personal lives, there's no room for Jesus in our lives too at Christmas. That's my fear. And so I want to pull out for you 3 lessons that we learn from the innkeeper. Number 1, it's easy to miss Jesus. Okay, so the innkeeper made one of the most foolish decisions in the history of the world because he didn't realize that this little baby wasn't just some normal little baby who was going to be born. This is the Lord himself. This is Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world. He didn't understand who he was dealing with. He didn't understand who that baby was inside of Mary, and so he just totally missed out on Jesus. And you know, we can miss out on Jesus too. You might see the story of Jesus at Christmas time, but you might not realize who he really is, that he is God himself, God in the flesh. In fact, as we dig deeper into the Christmas story in Luke, the angels who appear to the shepherds, they tell us exactly who Jesus is. The Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord, has been born today in Bethlehem. That's who Jesus is. He's the Savior of the world. He's the one who came to die for the sins of the whole world on the cross. And he's not just another person or some good teacher or prophet or even just some special child with a lot of promise. He's God himself. God came in human flesh. And yet it's so easy to miss out on Jesus because he was born 2,000 years ago, because he was born in a part of the Roman Empire that wasn't really a big deal. Because when God came to the earth, he didn't come with all kinds of fanfare and all kinds of like, hey, look, here's God on earth. He was born to poor people. He was placed in a manger. And so it's easy for you and I to miss out on Jesus. It's easy for us to get so busy with stuff that we don't understand who Jesus really is. Don't make that mistake this Christmas. Now, let's look at the second lesson from the innkeeper. It's tempting to dismiss Jesus. I'm pretty sure that when the innkeeper saw Mary and Joseph and he saw how pregnant Mary was, he was like, "No, I don't want this headache. I don't have time for these people. I don't have room for these people." And so he dismissed Mary and Joseph. And of course, most of all, he dismissed Jesus. Now, you and I can dismiss Jesus too. It may be that we don't understand who he is, but maybe we get a sense that he is the Lord and he is the Savior and he is this person who is more than just an average person that he might be God himself. And that means that if Jesus is going to come into our lives, he's going to change things. He's going to change our lives, give us a new set of desires, a new list of priorities for our lives. You know, when Jesus comes into your life, he doesn't come to bring a bunch of rules or to bring a bunch of religion or a checklist of things to do or not do. That's not what Jesus comes to bring. But he does want you to totally reorient your life. Now, that's a really good thing because Jesus has come to rescue us from our sin, but he's also come to rescue us from a life of purposelessness, a life tied to sinful behaviors, bad behaviors, negative behaviors that really pull us off course. But here's the thing, Jesus has come to replace all those negative things to give us joy and meaning and purpose in our lives. And so, yeah, Jesus is going to change everything. You need to know that if you accept Jesus as your Savior, he's going to change your life, but that's a really good thing, though it can be a little bit scary. But it's worth it because at the end of the day, when you have a relationship with him, God brings into your life so much joy, so much peace, so much purpose, everything that was promised that would come with Jesus that first Christmas. And here's the final lesson from the Innkeeper. It's normal to be too preoccupied for Jesus. At the end of the day, I think the Innkeeper's big crime was that he was just too busy. He had just too much going on that he didn't notice what was going on through Mary, through this young woman, and what God was doing in Mary and Joseph's lives, and then really in the lives of everyone in the world. He was too preoccupied with Jesus. And at Christmas, we're so preoccupied. We're so busy. We have so much stuff going on. I mean, if it's close to Christmas right now, you probably have 10 things going on in your mind right now of things you should be doing. You might even be thinking of things you need to do as soon as this video ends. But here's the deal. If we are too preoccupied for Jesus, that is a very dangerous place to be because Jesus is what we need. He's who we need in our lives. He's here to save us and give us a new life, a life that we just mentioned, a life of joy and peace and purpose, and a life of true happiness in him. But we get so distracted that we're so likely to miss out on all that stuff. The problem isn't I don't have enough room for Jesus. The problem is that I don't make room for him. Think of all the things that you make room for in your lives. You make room for video games. You make room for hobbies. You make room for reading. You make room for your kids' sports, whatever it is. So the problem isn't that I don't have enough time. We'd all say that. We'd all probably say, well, I don't have enough time for Jesus. That's not true. The problem is that we don't make time for him. Don't be so preoccupied that you miss out on God this Christmas. Make time for him. Make time for him by going to church, by talking to God, reading his word, by getting involved with a mentor or being in a small group like I hope you are if you're watching this video. That's the lesson from the Innkeeper that I really walk away with every Christmas. Don't get too preoccupied. Don't miss out on who Jesus is. Make room for him. He deserves it. And if you allow him into your life, he'll change everything.